Now, Victoria's Premier has pledged to convene an anti-hate task force following a spate of anti-Semitic attacks in Melbourne over the weekend. A 34-year-old man from New South Wales allegedly set alight the front door of a synagogue in East Melbourne while 20 people were inside sharing a meal on Friday night. As police investigate whether the synagogue attack is linked to other incidents in the city, Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke had this to say.
Part of winning the fight against anti-Semitism belongs to every Australian. This is something we do together. It is something where people from the Jewish community will often remind me, it's a fight that will never be over.
Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke speaking from outside the East Melbourne Synagogue yesterday. And joining me now to discuss this issue is Dvir Abramovich. He's the chair of the Anti-Defamation Commission, a Jewish Australian community organisation which works to combat anti-Semitism. Welcome back to Radio National Breakfast, Dvir.
Good morning, Kylie. Good to be with you.
First of all, can you share with us your reflections on this series of incidents in your hometown this weekend?
Look, we in the Jewish community are not okay. And I need Australians to really hear that if ever there was a moment to break the glass and pull the alarm label, never again, it's right now, because what happened on Friday night wasn't some isolated outburst. It was the boiling point of something that's been building for years now, since October 7. And anti-Semitism for us is not just an abstract issue. It's a real-life threat to our lives and to Jewish life here. And right now, the Jewish community, Kylie, is facing a crisis of exploding anti-Semitism that really, in my view, has risen to the level of a national emergency. We are experiencing a tsunami of anti-Jewish hate that it's not a surprise that it's drawing the attention of those at the highest levels. But since October 7th, the acts of violence against the Jewish community have surged to levels not seen in generations. And I have to tell you that I feel it. I stood outside the East Melbourne Synagogue on Saturday, a day after the fire, and I looked at the scorched doorway and something broke in me. This wasn't just a sense of physical safety, but something sacred. And there's a prevailing feeling in our community that something is cracked, and we're not sure who's going to protect us. We feel that we're being hunted, and while people are sort of trafficking in slogans, and we really need to be clear-eyed about the threats that we face, and we need courage as a nation to face them.
I hear you using terms like national emergency and talking about, this issue rising to the view of the highest levels. So how would you describe then, in that context, the federal government's response over the weekend?
Look, first of all, I want to acknowledge that, Prime Minister Albanese and Home Affairs Minister Burke and former Attorney General Mark Dreyfus all condemned the attack in strong terms. And I think Prime Minister Albanese was right when he said these actions have no place. However, we need more than words. We need action. We need an action plan that includes a series of steps that can be taken, whether it is emerging state and federal hate crime task forces, whether it's outlawing violent slogans like death to the IDF, and implementing national anti-hate education. I want to make the point that Jews today are being attacked not because they represent the Israeli government or because they're cheering the war in Gaza. They are being targeted because they believe in the right of the state of Israel to exist, and they are being targeted because they are Jewish. And you protest a policy, not a people. You protest with your voice and with your heart, not with petrol and with violence. And that is the issue, that, we need something to be done on a concrete, real level. Enough with the words, we now need action.
Victoria's Parliament acted earlier this year by passing anti-vilification laws. Is that the kind of action that you want to see more of? I mean, what more do you want done? And I guess we should ask, are those laws working?
Well, laws are only as powerful as the will to enforce them. And what we are seeing, of course, is that the infrastructure exists, but the hatred and the anti-Semitism is outpacing it. These attacks are not spontaneous. They're part of an organized ideological war on Jewish life in Australia. And until we start treating anti-Semitism with the same urgency that we apply to other national threats, to terrorism, we are going to, until we move from reaction to prevention, these laws won't be enough. Yes, we've had all these laws that have come in, but we need more than that. And I think that's where education comes in.
You're listening to Radio National Breakfast, where Dvir Abramovich, chair of the Anti-Defamation Commission, is my guest. Dvir, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a statement condemning the incidents, demanding, and here's a quote, the Australian government take all action to deal with the rioters to the fullest extent of the law and prevent similar attacks in the future. Is it, though, Mr Netanyahu's place to advise the Australian government on how to manage this? Is that productive?
I think any Jewish leader has not just a right, but an obligation to point out the crisis that is happening on our streets. You know, we had the cars torched. We had a synagogue torched. We had a mob storming an Israeli restaurant. Let's call it what it is. Anti-Semitism, pure and simple. Anti-Semitic violence coordinated across the city in a single night. And this was after last year, and another synagogue, the Hadassah synagogue, was firebombed. Are we really expecting a Jewish leader, the Israeli Prime Minister, to be quiet? I mean, since October 7th, I want your listeners to understand, life for us has changed completely. There's now a culture where people think it's okay to attack Jews. There's a culture of demonization. Anybody who is Jewish, anybody who looks Jewish, anybody who has a connection to Israel is a target. And that is not acceptable. And to me, it's not about advising the Australian government. It's about expressing the pain that every Jew at the moment is feeling.
I suppose I wondered, Dvir, given that when the Australian Prime Minister or Foreign Minister criticises Israel's policies, for example, in Gaza, then there's a fairly strong rebuttal from Israel's government that is not, that this is about Israel's right to defend itself, and this is not, it's not a valid critique. And so it does seem uneven, if you like.
I have never met anyone who said that expressing dissent against Israeli government policies is anti-Semitism. It's actually fine for anybody to disagree. In fact, you have Israelis in Israel. But to me, it's more about an issue that we have Jews being attacked on the street. We have a synagogue with families and kids inside who could have been burned down. This is, to me, a side issue. If we want to drain this swamp of hatred, of anti-Semitism, we have to start here and not be sidetracked by what a Prime Minister says.
Dvir, just finally, do you believe the government's upcoming ban for under-16s on social media might reduce the potential for hate speech to spread online? Is that something that you're hopeful of?
I think it's a very positive step, because we know that social media is a slow-acting poison, which is robbing a lot of kids of not just of their humanity, but also of their moral compass. And it is insidious, and I've applauded this step. Hopefully it can be enforced, and hopefully the tech companies who are responsible for enforcing community guidelines and following the law law comes with the government. But we know that a lot of the incitement, the radicalization, whether it's anti-Semitism or other forms of bigotry, is happening in the bedrooms when kids are on their phones or on their computers.
Dvir, thank you for joining us, and obviously sending our best wishes to your community there in Melbourne after such a terrible weekend.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you again.
Dvir Abramovich, chair of the Anti-Defamation Commission, speaking with me there.